The Great Hall of Concordia Prime had never seen such anger. Representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their assigned seats, all talking at once. Their voices echoed off the crystal walls in dozens of different languages. But they all said the same thing. Humans had to go. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat alone in the human section. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style. She wore the standard blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Around her, empty seats showed where other human representatives should have been sitting. But Earth had sent only one person to this meeting. They knew what was coming. "The humans are dangerous," shouted Ambassador Vextal from the Zephyrian delegation. His tall, thin body shook with emotion. His purple skin had turned almost black with anger. "They expand into space without asking anyone. They take planets that belong to others. They start fights everywhere they go." The other aliens nodded and made sounds of agreement. Some stamped their feet. Others clicked their claws together. The noise grew louder. Chen did not move. She kept her face calm and looked straight ahead. She had heard these complaints many times before. "The humans do not follow proper rules," said Representative Korth from the hegemony. His massive body filled 3 seats. His forearms moved as he spoke. "When they meet new species, they do not use the correct protocols. They just start talking to everyone like they are old friends. This is not how civilized beings behave." More voices joined in. The collective speaker, a being made of flowing energy, pulsed with red light as it spoke. "Humans spread their ideas like a disease. Young species listen to them and forget their place. They teach others to question authority. This cannot continue." Elder Zeph from the Ancient Ones spoke in his slow, deep voice. "In my 3,000 years, I have never seen such chaos. Humans make other species think they can be equals. They give away technology for free. They help the weak fight the strong. This upsets the natural order." Chen finally stood up. The hall became quiet for a moment. All eyes turned to her. "May I speak?" she asked in a clear voice. "You may," said the council chairman, though he did not sound happy about it. Chen looked around the hall. She saw fear in some faces, anger in others. A few species looked sad, but they stayed quiet. "The human race understands your concerns," Chen began. "We know we are different. We know we do things that make you uncomfortable. We have tried to fit in, but perhaps we are just too different from the rest of you." "Finally, she admits it," whispered someone from the back. Chen continued. "If you believe the galaxy would be better without humans, then we will not fight this decision. We have always believed that beings should be free to choose their own path." The hall erupted again. Some aliens seemed surprised by her calm response. They had expected humans to argue or threaten or beg. The voting began quickly. Each species was called by name. One by one, they voted to expel humanity from the Galactic Council. The humans would lose all trade agreements. They would lose protection under galactic law. They would have to leave Council space within 30 days. Only one vote came for humanity, their own. When the counting finished, Chairman Nexus announced the result. By a vote of 46 to 1, humanity is expelled from the Galactic Council. You have 30 standard days to remove all human presence from Council territory. Chen nodded once. She gathered her few papers and put them in her bag. Then she stood and walked toward the door. "Wait," called Chairman Nexus. "Do you have nothing else to say? No final words?" Chen stopped and turned back. "We understand your decision. We will be gone within the week." Her voice was steady and calm. "Good luck to all of you." Then she walked out of the hall. The silence that followed was strange. Many representatives looked at each other with confused expressions. They had expected drama. They had expected humans to cry or shout or make threats. Instead, they got polite acceptance and a promise to leave early. "That was unexpected," said Vextal to his aide. "Yes, sir. I thought they would put up more of a fight." In the viewing galleries, members of the galactic press waited for interviews. But Chen walked past them all without stopping. She did not answer any questions. She just kept walking. Within hours, the human delegation was packing their offices. Staff members moved through the halls carrying boxes and equipment. They worked quickly and quietly. No one seemed upset or angry. They just did their jobs. Ambassador Vextal watched from his office window as human ships began arriving at the station. Large cargo vessels docked at the human sections. Workers loaded boxes and furniture with practiced efficiency. "Sir," his aide said, "the humans are moving very fast. Their embassy will be empty by tomorrow." "Good," Vextal replied. But he sounded uncertain. The sooner they leave, the better. By the end of the day, news of the vote had spread across the galaxy. Human colonies received official notifications. Trade partners learned about the new situation. Military bases got orders to prepare for evacuation. The reaction was not what anyone expected. Dr. Kethvar, an Altarian doctor, sent his resignation to the Rigel Medical Center. His message was short. I learned everything I know about surgery from human teachers. Without them, I am just another ordinary doctor. I cannot work in a galaxy that rejects the people who made me who I am. Similar messages came from across known space. Scientists, teachers, engineers, and artists, all announcing they would no longer work with organizations that banned humans. On the mining world of Kepler-7, the Tauri work crews stopped their machines. Their leader, a massive being with rock-like skin, made an announcement. Humans taught us that workers are not just tools. They showed us how to be safe and still be productive. We will not go back to the old ways of fear and death. The news confused many species. Why were non-humans defending the people who had just been expelled? In his private quarters on Concordia Prime, Chairman Nexus reviewed the vote results. It had been unanimous, just as planned. The galaxy would finally have peace without human interference. But as he read reports from across council space, a small worry began to grow in his mind. Too many important people seemed upset about losing the humans. Too many critical systems apparently depended on human involvement. He pushed the thought away. The council had made the right choice. Humans were disruptive and dangerous. Their removal would bring stability to the galaxy. Outside his window, the last human ship prepared to leave the station. In a few hours, Concordia Prime would be free of human presence for the first time in over 400 years. The chairman went to sleep that night convinced he had helped save galactic civilization. He was very, very wrong. The human exodus began at dawn on the second day. Across council space, something unprecedented happened. Human colonies did not protest or fight back. They simply started packing. Massive cargo ships appeared in orbit around every human settlement. From the busy industrial worlds near the galactic core, to the lonely research stations on the outer rim. On New Terra, the largest human colony world, Governor Patricia Walsh addressed her people through the planetary communication network. Her voice was calm and steady. Citizens of New Terra, she began, the Galactic Council has made their decision clear. We are no longer welcome in their space. Within 6 days, we will begin evacuation procedures. Please gather only essential belongings. Everything else will be handled by the relocation teams. The colonists did not panic. They did not riot in the streets. Instead, they went to work with the same quiet determination that had built their world from an empty rock into a thriving planet. But something strange began happening. The humans were not leaving alone. Dr. Kethvar stood in his laboratory on the medical station orbiting Rigel 4. Around him, his research team worked to pack decades of scientific equipment. But half of his team was not human. They were Altarians, beings with blue-green skin and large, intelligent eyes. Doctor, said his assistant Velthar, the medical consortium has offered us new positions. They say we can stay and continue our work without the humans. Kethavar stopped packing and looked at his young assistant. Velthar, what did you learn in your first year working here? I learned surgical techniques that my people had never imagined. I learned about medicine that could heal wounds we thought were impossible to fix. And who taught you these things? Velthar's large eyes grew sad. The humans did. Dr. Martinez showed me how to repair neural damage. Dr. Kim taught me about genetic therapy. Dr. Okonkwo helped me understand how different species' bodies work. Then you understand why we cannot stay? Kethvar said quietly. Our knowledge came from working together with humans. Without them, we are just practicing old medicine badly. I will not pretend to be something I am not. The assistant nodded. Where will we go, Doctor? Wherever the humans go, we will follow. They accepted us as partners, not servants. That is worth more than any position the consortium could offer. Similar conversations happened throughout council space. On the asteroid mining stations of the Kepler belt, Tauri workers shut down their equipment and began dismantling their operations. Supervisor Gorth, whose stone-like body showed scars from decades of dangerous mining work, addressed his crews. The humans taught us that no mineral is worth a worker's life. They showed us safety procedures that our people had never bothered to learn. Before they came, we lost hundreds of workers every year to accidents. Now we lose almost none. His workers rumbled their agreement. These beings had skin like granite and were nearly indestructible, but even they had learned to value their lives more after working with humans. The council says we should continue working for them, Gorth continued. They promise to keep buying our ore at the same prices. But they want us to go back to the old ways. Fast work, no safety checks, no care for the workers. A younger Tauri raised his massive fist. We refuse. Humans showed us we are worth more than just production numbers. Then we pack our equipment, Gorth declared. Where humans go, we go. They treated us as equals, not just strong backs for lifting heavy things. In the depths of space, something even more unexpected occurred. Captain Zexith of the Hegemony's 5th Fleet received orders from High Command. He was to monitor human evacuation ships and ensure they left Council space on schedule. He was specifically ordered not to assist them in any way. Zexith read the orders 3 times, then deleted them from his system. Navigation, he called to his bridge crew. Plot courses to intercept the human convoy from the Proxima system. Sir, his second-in-command said carefully, Command ordered us to observe only. We are not supposed to help them. I did not receive any such orders, Zexith replied firmly. Check your communications logs. I believe there may have been a transmission error. His crew exchanged glances. They all knew the captain was lying, but they also understood why. 2 years earlier, Captain Zexith's ship had been badly damaged in a battle with pirates near the Proxima Gate. His crew was trapped and dying when 3 human vessels had appeared. Without hesitation, they had fought off the pirates and rescued the Hegemony crew. The humans had asked for nothing in return. Sir, the navigator said with a slight smile, our communications are indeed showing some technical difficulties. I think we should escort the convoy to ensure safe passage through this sector. Good thinking, Zexith replied. We cannot be too careful about pirate activity in these areas. 17 other Hegemony captains reported similar communication problems that week. Human evacuation convoys found themselves escorted by some of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. Their crews claiming technical issues had prevented them from receiving orders to the contrary. The most surprising exodus came from the refugee camps on the border worlds. The Vorthan people had lost their homeworld to a stellar disaster 7 years earlier. The Council species had offered them temporary shelter, but it was humans who had opened their colonies permanently to the refugees. Elder Senna, speaking for the surviving Vorthans, addressed the Council's Refugee Commission. You offer us new camps on designated worlds. You promise adequate food and basic shelter. This is more than we had before, and we are grateful. The Commission representative smiled. We are pleased you see reason. The Vorthans will have good lives under Council protection. But we decline your offer, Senna continued. The smile disappeared. I do not understand. When we were homeless and dying, the Council gave us camps and basic supplies. The humans gave us homes. They invited us to live in their cities, work in their businesses, marry into their families. They treated us not as refugees to be managed, but as people to be welcomed. The humans are leaving Council space, the representative pointed out. They cannot protect you anymore. Then we go where they go, Senna replied simply. Home is not a place on a map. Home is where people care about you as family. By the end of the first week, the scope of the exodus became clear. It was not just humans leaving Council space. Engineers, doctors, teachers, miners, farmers, and countless others were abandoning their post to follow humanity into exile. Trade routes that had operated for centuries began shutting down as the neutral human. Freighters that facilitated commerce between suspicious species disappeared. Research projects ground to a halt as mixed species teams dissolved. Defense networks went dark as human early warning stations powered down and departed. On Concordia Prime, emergency meetings ran around the clock. Ambassador Vextal found himself staring at reports that made no sense. How many non-humans are leaving with them? He asked his aide. Current estimates suggest over 12 million beings from 37 different species, sir. The number grows every day, but why? What hold do humans have over these people? His aide, a young Zephyrian named Korth, hesitated before answering. Sir, I have been reviewing the data. It appears that many of these individuals work directly with humans in collaborative projects. They claim their knowledge and skills came from human teaching and cooperation. Nonsense, Vextal snapped. They are intelligent beings. They do not need human guidance to function. Perhaps not, sir, but many seem to believe they do. Vextal looked out his office window at the space lanes around Concordia Prime. Usually, they were filled with ships from dozens of species, carrying goods and passengers throughout Council space. Now, many of the regular routes seemed empty. This is temporary, he told himself. Once the disruption passes, everything will return to normal. The galaxy will be more peaceful without human interference. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered that perhaps they had made a terrible mistake. He pushed the thought away and returned to his work. Outside, another convoy of mixed-species ships jumped to hyperspace, following the humans into the unknown regions beyond Council territory. The quiet exodus continued. On the 8th day after the vote, the first crisis hit. The Intersystem Trade Network crashed at 0347 Galactic Standard Time. Across Council space, cargo ships suddenly found themselves unable to dock at stations. Trade agreements that had worked perfectly for decades became meaningless pieces of paper. Commerce between different species ground to a complete halt. The problem was simple but devastating. For over 2 centuries, humans had served as neutral middlemen in galactic trade. Most alien species were too proud, too suspicious, or too different from each other to deal directly. They needed someone they could trust, someone who had no ancient grudges or territorial claims. Humans had filled that role perfectly. They were new enough to have no old enemies, but honest enough to be trusted with valuable cargo. They had learned the customs and languages of dozens of species. They knew which beings could work together and which ones needed to be kept apart. Now they were gone. On the trading station above Zerion 3, Station Master Veclon stared at his empty docking bays. Normally, his facility handled 300 ships per day. Today, only 12 had arrived, and half of those were leaving again without unloading. "What is happening?" he asked his operations chief. "Sir, the hegemony freighters refuse to dock if collective ships are present. The collective vessels will not share space with anyone from the Tauri mining guilds. The Zephyrian traders demand exclusive access to Bay 7, but the Altarians claim they have rights to that same bay under an old agreement." Veclon felt a headache building behind his eyes. These problems existed before. How did we handle them? Human Shipping Incorporated managed all the scheduling, sir. They knew which species could work together. They handled all the negotiations. They made sure everyone got fair treatment without anyone feeling insulted. Can we do that ourselves? The operations chief looked uncomfortable. "We have tried, sir, but when I suggested the hegemony ships use Bay 4, their captain said I was deliberately assigning them an inferior position. When I offered Bay 4 to the collective instead, they accused me of showing favoritism to synthetic beings over organic ones. The Tauri representative threatened to file a formal complaint about species discrimination." Veclon rubbed his temples. These were the same species that had traded peacefully for decades when humans handled the arrangements. Now, without human mediators, every small detail became a major diplomatic incident. The crisis spread quickly. On the medical station orbiting Rigel 4, Dr. Zenthan faced a disaster of his own. The Rigel Medical Consortium had been the galaxy's leading medical research facility. It brought together the best doctors and scientists from 20 different species to share knowledge and develop new treatments. The key word was "had been." "Doctor," his assistant reported, "we have lost 63% of our research staff. They have submitted resignations and left with the human evacuation ships." "But they were not all human," Dr. Zenthan protested. "Many were from other species." "Yes, sir. But they all worked in programs that were started by humans or used human research methods." Dr. Kethvar took his entire neural surgery team. Dr. Vorthal closed down the genetic therapy department. The trauma surgery unit no longer has enough staff to operate. Dr. Zenthan walked through the now quiet halls of the research facility. Laboratories that had buzzed with activity now stood empty. Equipment that had run continuous experiments was shut down and covered with sheets. He stopped at the Human Research Library. The room was empty now, not just of people, but of data. The humans had taken all their research files when they left. What remained were just the basic medical textbooks that every species had contributed. "Sir," his assistant said quietly, "we have a problem with the remaining research projects." "What kind of problem?" "We are discovering that many of our most important medical advances were based on human theoretical work. The new cancer treatments, the organ regeneration techniques, the cross-species surgery protocols, they all used human research as their foundation." Dr. Zenthon felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. Are you saying we cannot continue this work without humans?
I am saying we do not understand the work well enough to continue it alone.
The human scientists were not just part of our teams. They were often the leaders who understood the basic principles. The rest of us learned techniques from them without fully understanding the science behind them. Across the galaxy, similar realizations were occurring. The frontier defense grid, which had protected Council space from external threats for 200 years, began failing sector by sector. Admiral Gextar received the reports at his headquarters on the fortress world of Bastion Prime. His aide, an efficient being with multiple arms, delivered the bad news with mechanical precision. Sir, we have lost contact with early warning stations in 12 sectors. Long-range scanners are showing gaps in coverage across the entire outer rim. Response time to threats has increased by 400%. Explain, the Admiral ordered. The humans operated most of the remote sensor stations, sir. Their ships provided rapid response to incoming threats. Their early warning networks gave us advance notice of problems before they became serious. We have our own ships and sensors. Yes, sir, but our forces were designed to work together with the human rapid response fleets. We focused on heavy combat operations. The humans handled reconnaissance, early warning, and first response. Without them, we are trying to do jobs we were never equipped for. The aide activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's outer rim. Red zones marked areas where defense coverage had been lost. Sir, the human sensor networks detected and tracked all movement in deep space. Their paranoia, as we called it, meant they watched for threats constantly. They shared this information freely with all Council species. Now we realize that 90% of our threat detection came from human sources. Admiral Gextar studied the display. Entire sectors of space now showed as blind spots. If hostile forces were moving in those areas, the Council would not know until they attacked inhabited systems. How long to replace the human systems with our own? Conservative estimate, 15 years, sir. Optimistic estimate, 8 years. And that assumes we can figure out how their systems worked. The humans took all technical data when they left. But the most immediate crisis was happening on Concordia Prime itself. Chairman Nexus sat in his office, surrounded by reports of disasters from across Council space. But what worried him most was what was happening right in the Council chambers. For the first time in over 400 years, the Galactic Council was unable to function. The emergency session had been called to address the trade network crisis. But after 6 hours of debate, they had accomplished nothing. Species that had worked together for centuries were now arguing about everything. The Zephyrians demanded priority access to the remaining trade routes. The hegemony insisted on military oversight of all commerce. The collective proposed a completely automated trading system that would eliminate the need for biological traders. The Ancient Ones suggested returning to the old ways of direct barter between species. Every proposal was rejected by someone. Every compromise was seen as unfair by multiple parties. The careful balance that had allowed 47 different species to work together was falling apart. Sir, his aide reported, the Altarian delegation has walked out of the session. They claim the hegemony representatives insulted their cultural values. What about the mediators? Nexus asked. Use standard diplomatic protocols. Sir, the humans were our standard diplomatic protocols. For over 4 centuries, they handled disputes between Council members. They had special techniques for finding compromise between very different species. We do not know how they did it. Nexus looked at the records of human diplomatic interventions. The files showed thousands of disputes resolved, usually within hours. The techniques looked simple when written down. Find common interests, separate emotions from facts, offer creative solutions that gave everyone something they wanted. But when other species tried to use these same techniques, they failed completely. What had seemed natural and easy for humans was apparently much more difficult than anyone had realized. By the end of the 8th day, 3 separate territorial disputes had escalated to the brink of war. Trade between species had dropped by 70%. Medical facilities across the galaxy were closing. Defense networks were failing, and in the silence of deep space, something else was stirring. Long-range sensors on the edge of known space, the few that still worked, detected movement in the dark regions beyond the galactic rim. The Kethmori hive, held back for 3 centuries by human vigilance and rapid response, began to probe the suddenly undefended borders of Council space. Chairman Nexus went to sleep that night knowing the galaxy was in serious trouble. but he still believed it was temporary. Surely intelligent beings could solve these problems without human help. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. 2 weeks after the vote, the true disaster became clear. The galactic economy, built over centuries of careful cooperation, collapsed in spectacular fashion. What started as minor trade disruptions became a complete breakdown of the system that held Council space together. On the industrial world of Mechanus 7, Factory Supervisor Dextor watched his production lines shut down one by one. His facility built starships for the Council Defense Force, massive vessels that required components from 17 different worlds and 12 different species. "Sir," his production manager reported, "the Altarian crystal matrices have not arrived. The shipment was supposed to come 3 days ago." "Contact the suppliers," Dextor ordered. "We tried, sir. The Altarians say they sent the crystals on schedule, but the Zephyrian Transport Company refuses to deliver to our facility. They claim we still owe them money from a contract dispute 6 months ago." Dexter felt his stomach drop. That dispute was settled. The humans from Galactic Mediation Services handled the arbitration. Both sides agreed to the solution. "Yes, sir. But now the Zephyrians say the human arbitration was invalid because humans are no longer recognized as neutral parties. They want the dispute reopened and handled by Zephyrian law. That is insane. The contract was completed under galactic trade law. The Altarians agree with you, sir. But they refuse to use Zephyrian transporters if the Zephyrians do not honor existing contracts. They are looking for alternative shipping. But most other transport companies are having similar problems." Dexter walked onto his factory floor. Massive starship hulls sat half-finished, waiting for components that might never arrive. His workers stood idle, unsure what to do next. This same scene was playing out across the galaxy. Complex supply chains that had operated smoothly for decades were breaking down as species discovered they could not work together without human mediation. Dr. Yenthal, head of the Consortium of Sciences, faced an even worse crisis. The galaxy's premier research institution was discovering that its foundation was built on sand. "Doctor," her research coordinator reported, "we have compiled the assessment you requested. The results are troubling. Show me." The coordinator activated a holographic display showing the consortium's research programs. Red indicators marked projects that were failing or had already been shut down. 74% of our current research is based on theoretical foundations developed by human scientists. The quantum field research, the faster-than-light communications project, the stellar engineering studies, all of them used human mathematical models and theoretical frameworks. Dr. Yenthal studied the display with growing horror. "Are you saying we cannot continue this work?" "We can continue to use the applications, Doctor, but we do not understand the underlying principles well enough to advance the research further. The human scientists did not just contribute to these projects. They were the ones who understood how the basic science worked." "What about our own scientists? Surely we can learn these principles ourselves." "We are trying, Doctor. But human theoretical physics was apparently much more advanced than we realized. Their mathematical models use concepts that our scientists are struggling to understand. It appears that while we were focused on practical applications, the humans were developing entirely new ways of understanding how the universe works." The coordinator highlighted specific projects on the display. "The new propulsion system research has stopped completely. Without Dr. Chen's team, we do not understand how their spacefold equations work. The medical nanobots project is failing because we cannot replicate Dr. Martinez's biological interface theories. The climate control systems for terraforming are breaking down because we do not understand the atmospheric modeling that Dr. Okafor developed." Dr. Yenthal sat down heavily in her chair. For decades, she had thought of humans as enthusiastic but not particularly brilliant. They seemed to work harder than they thought, always eager to collaborate and share ideas. She had never realized they were carrying the intellectual weight of galactic civilization. But the worst crisis was happening on the frontier. Admiral Gextar stood in the command center of Bastion Prime, watching his military career collapse in real time. The holographic display showed the outer rim of Council space, where red warning indicators flashed like emergency beacons. "Report," he ordered. His intelligence chief, a multi-eyed being with perfect recall, delivered the news in clipped professional tones. "The Keth Mori Hive has launched coordinated probes against 6 systems simultaneously. Hostile fleets detected in the Zirian, Altair, and Proxima sectors. Estimated enemy strength, 12,000 vessels. Our response? Sir, our rapid response fleets are inadequate. Without the human early warning networks, we did not detect the enemy movement until they were already attacking outer colonies. Our heavy battle fleets are designed for major engagements, not rapid deployment across multiple sectors. Admiral Gextar studied the tactical situation. The Kethmori were insectoid aliens from outside the galaxy, who had tried to invade Council space many times over the past 3 centuries. Every previous invasion had been stopped quickly because human scout ships detected them early, and human rapid response fleets delayed them until the main Council forces could arrive. Now the humans were gone, and the Kethmori had apparently been watching and waiting. How did the humans handle this type of threat? He asked. Sir, human doctrine called for constant deep space patrols and immediate response to any unusual activity. They maintained sensor networks throughout the border regions and kept fast attack fleets positioned for rapid deployment. They called it defense in depth. Can we implement similar tactics? Sir, the human fleets were specifically designed for this role. Fast ships with long-range sensors and advanced communications. Our fleets are built for different purposes. Heavy assault and planetary defense. We would need to redesign our entire military structure. How long would that take? Years, sir. And that assumes we can figure out how the human systems worked. They took all technical specifications when they left. The Admiral looked at the display again. 6 systems under attack! And his forces could respond to maybe 2 of them before the others fell. But perhaps the most devastating collapse was happening to the species that had followed humanity's example. The Novari Confederation, a group of younger species that had joined the Council only 50 years earlier, announced their withdrawal from galactic civilization entirely. Ambassador Senka delivered their final statement to the Council chambers. Her people were tall, graceful beings with silver skin and large, expressive eyes. They had always looked up to humans as examples of how newer species could find their place in galactic society. The Galactic Council expelled humanity for being disruptive and unpredictable, she began. But we have learned that without humans, this council cannot function at all. Trade has collapsed, research has stopped, defense has failed. Diplomacy has become impossible, Chairman Nexus interrupted. The current difficulties are temporary. We will adapt and find new solutions. Perhaps you will, Seneca replied. But the Novari Confederation has lost faith in this organization. Humanity showed us that it was possible for younger species to be treated as equals rather than servants. They proved that cooperation was stronger than domination. They demonstrated that sharing knowledge freely made everyone stronger. She looked around the chamber at the representatives of species that had voted to expel humanity. You called humans dangerous because they inspired others to think differently. You were right. They were dangerous to a system based on fear and control. But we have seen what happens when that inspiration is removed. Without the human example, this galaxy is returning to the old ways of suspicion, greed, and violence. What are you saying? Nexus asked. The Novari Confederation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will seek out humanity in their exile. Perhaps together we can build something better than what you have here. The announcement hit Council space like a shockwave. Within days, 4 more younger species announced similar decisions. The Talaxian Collective, the Free Worlds of Andromeda, the Centauri Republic, and the Democratic Union of Vega all formally withdrew from the Council to follow humanity into exile. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. On the planet Altair 4, the most advanced medical facility in the galaxy, Dr. Zorthan made a discovery that changed everything. He was trying to understand why their most important medical treatments had stopped working after the human doctors left. I do not understand, he told his research team. We have the equipment, we have the procedures, we have the medicines, but the success rates have dropped to almost 0. His assistant, a young Altarian named Veltar, had been studying the medical records carefully. Doctor, I think I know what happened. Look at this. She showed him treatment records from before and after the human departure. The procedures looked identical on paper, but the results were completely different. The humans did not just follow our medical protocols, Veltar explained. They modified them constantly based on each individual patient. Dr. Martinez would adjust dosages based on the Patient's emotional state, Dr. Kim would change surgical approaches depending on the species' cultural beliefs about healing. Dr. Okafor would spend hours talking to patients before treatment, learning about the 3 weeks after the vote. Emergency sirens wailed throughout Concordia Prime. The sound had not been heard for over 2 centuries, but everyone knew what it meant. The galaxy was in mortal danger. The council chamber filled with representatives in a state of panic. Many species had not bothered to send their usual diplomats. Instead, they sent their military commanders and emergency coordinators. The time for normal politics had passed. Chairman Nexus looked around the chamber with growing despair. Half the seats were empty. 12 species had formally withdrawn from the council. Others had simply stopped participating. The great alliance that had kept peace for centuries was falling apart. Ambassador Vexital stood to address the assembly. The proud Zephyrian who had led the campaign against humanity now looked exhausted and defeated. His purple skin had faded to a sickly gray color. His hands shook as he held his speech notes. Fellow council members, he began, I must report the complete failure of our civilization. Angry voices erupted from around the chamber, but Vexital continued speaking over them. In the 3 weeks since humanity's departure, we have experienced total economic collapse. Trade between council species has decreased by 91%. Industrial production has stopped on 47 worlds. Medical facilities across the galaxy are closing due to lack of knowledge and supplies. He activated a holographic display that showed the extent of the disaster. Red zones marked failed systems, collapsed governments, and abandoned colonies. Our defense networks have completely failed. The Kethemori Hive has successfully invaded 12 systems. Their fleets are advancing toward the core worlds with no effective resistance. Our own military forces cannot coordinate properly without the communication networks that humans maintained. Representative Korth from the hegemony stood up. This is temporary. We can rebuild these systems ourselves. With what? Vexital replied bitterly. We have discovered that humanity was not just a member of our civilization. They were the foundation that held it together. Our trade, our science, our defense, our diplomacy, all of it depended on human coordination and knowledge. He looked directly at Korth. Your own military reports show that human early warning systems provided 96% of our threat detection. Human rapid response fleets handled 87% of border security. Human mediators resolved every major diplomatic crisis for the past 400 years. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of their mistake became clear. Dr. Yenthal from the Consortium of Sciences stood next. Her voice was hollow with despair. I have spent the past 2 weeks reviewing every major scientific advancement in the last century. 79% of them were based on theoretical work developed by human scientists. We did not just lose research partners. We lost the beings who understood how the universe actually works. She activated her own display, showing the collapse of galactic science. Without access to human theoretical frameworks, we cannot advance any of our most important research. The faster-than-light communication project has failed completely. Terraforming efforts have stopped because we do not understand the atmospheric models. Medical research has regressed to pre-contact levels. But surely, interrupted Elder Zeph from the Ancient Ones, beings of our intelligence can learn these things ourselves. Dr. Yenthal looked at the ancient being with something approaching pity. Elder, we have been trying, but human science was apparently centuries ahead of our own. They developed entirely new ways of understanding physics, biology, and mathematics. While we focused on practical applications, they were creating new theoretical foundations for all knowledge. She paused, then delivered the most devastating news of all. We are not just behind them in research. We are so far behind that we cannot even understand their old work. It will take us decades just to reach the level they achieved 50 years ago. Admiral Gextar delivered the military assessment. His report was brief and terrifying. The Kethmori invasion will reach the core worlds within 6 standard days. Our fleets cannot stop them. We estimate total military collapse within 2 weeks. Without human coordination and rapid response capabilities, we are defenseless against external threats. Chairman Nexus felt the weight of absolute failure crushing down on him. Everything they had built, everything they had achieved, was crumbling because they had expelled the one species that made it all possible. Emergency communications have been sent to every known human settlement, he announced to the chamber. We are prepared to offer complete restoration of their council membership, full reparations for damages, permanent seats on the High Command, and territorial concessions to secure their return. He waited for the responses to those communications. They came quickly, but they were all the same. The first reply came from New Geneva, one of the largest human colonies outside council space. The Terran Federation acknowledges your communication. We are not interested in renewed diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. Please do not contact us again. More responses arrived with similar messages: polite, brief, final. The last communication came from Admiral Sarah Chen, the former ambassador who had been so quiet during the expulsion vote. She now wore the uniform of the Terran Defense Force. Her message appeared on the chamber's main display. Her face was calm and professional, but her eyes showed no warmth at all. Chairman Nexus, the Galactic Council, made its position regarding humanity very clear 3 weeks ago. The vote was unanimous, except for our own. You determined that human involvement in galactic civilization was disruptive and dangerous. She paused, then continued in the same emotionless tone. Humanity accepts your decision completely. We have withdrawn from council space as requested. We are establishing our own civilization in the regions beyond your territory, together with the many species that chose to join us in exile. But Admiral, Chairman Nexus interrupted, the situation has changed. We realize now that we made a mistake. The galaxy needs humanity's contributions. Chen's expression did not change. The galaxy had humanity's contributions for over 4 centuries. You voted to reject them. That decision cannot be undone simply because you have discovered the consequences. We can negotiate new terms: full membership, expanded territories, permanent positions in the government. Chairman, you seem to misunderstand our position. This is not a negotiation. Humanity is not interested in returning to the Galactic Council under any terms. You made it clear that we do not belong in your civilization. We have accepted that judgment and moved on. The transmission began to end, but Chen added one final statement. We wish the Council well in managing the civilization you have chosen to build without us. Goodbye. The display went dark, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Over the following hours, desperate attempts were made to reach human settlements through intermediaries. Species that had remained neutral in the original vote offered to serve as mediators. Former human allies begged their old friends to reconsider. Every attempt met with the same result: polite but absolute refusal. As the session continued, reports arrived of the final disasters. The Kethmori fleets had broken through the last defense lines. 3 core worlds had fallen. Panic was spreading through council space as beings realized their civilization was ending. In the viewing galleries above the chamber, journalists from across the galaxy watched the collapse of the oldest alliance in known history. But they were not just observing. Many of their own news organizations were shutting down as the economic collapse made their work impossible. Ambassador Vextal stood one final time to address the council. His voice was barely above a whisper, but the chamber was so quiet that everyone could hear him. We told ourselves that humans were dangerous because they changed things. We said they were disruptive because they challenged the established order. We convinced ourselves that the galaxy would be more peaceful without them. He looked around at the half-empty chamber, at the representatives of a dying civilization. We were right about one thing: humans were dangerous. They were dangerous to a system based on fear, control, and the belief that some beings are naturally superior to others. They were dangerous because they proved that cooperation was stronger than domination, that sharing knowledge made everyone stronger, that treating others as equals created better results than treating them as servants. His voice grew stronger as he continued. But we were wrong about everything else. Without humans, we do not have peace, we have chaos. Without their disruption, we do not have stability, we have collapse. Without their dangerous ideas about equality and cooperation, we do not have a civilization at all. The chamber remained silent as Vextal delivered his final words as a council representative. I was the one who led the campaign to expel humanity. I convinced you that they were a threat to our way of life. I was correct, they were a threat to our way of life. But our way of life deserved to be threatened. It deserved to be changed. And now that they are gone, it deserves to die. He gathered his papers and walked toward the door. The Zephyrian Republic formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will seek asylum in human space if they will have us.